All right, hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 8.
I don't know.
I've lost track.
We were sick last week. Last week we all got sick. Me, you, Phoebe, Shepherd.
Super bad.
Jesus.
I still have like that annoying lingering congestion and and cough. It's like every time I talk, my throat itches and I have to cough. It's so annoying.
You sound more sick today than you sounded last week.
Because like everything's coming out now. Like it was all just like in there and bleh, and now like I'm not sick anymore. My body's just like getting rid of everything, I feel like. So yeah, I apologize for that.
Yeah, but new setup a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Did some upgrades. I think the chairs look like we were slouching too much.
The bean bags.
What's funny too is if you watch a full episode, if you just kind of scrub through it, you can see us slowly.
I feel like
sinking.
I'm doing that in this chair now, just because that's what's comfortable. But yeah, the bean bags. I mean, we liked them. We liked that they were orange and they kind of matched the theme of the podcast. But yeah, I think I'm gonna reupholster these chairs because I don't like the color of them.
What do you think about making these orange?
We could do a more muted orange.
Yeah, I think that orange was too bright, but yeah. So I'm a little sick too, but welcome back. This week, the topic of discussion is some people wanted to hear us talk about our time in the military. So just to give some context, we were in the military. We were in the Marine Corps. That's where we met, and we won't go too much into like us meeting, but we can save that for a different time. Just kind of more talking about our experience in the military and how that went and how it was different from maybe what we expected. Or I'll ask you first, what you joined in 2019?
So right out of high school, I joined the Marine Corps. I had a lot of people in my life at the time that had absolutely no faith in me making it through boot camp. But I actually graduated boot camp as a Marine Corps is like gone out of my brain. I kind of just like sometimes I miss it, but mostly I just want to forget about it.
Yeah.
But I graduated as a squad leader, which the only people that had faith in me were my mom, and that's it. My mom was the only person in my life who was like, "You're gonna do great. You're gonna be so good." But yeah. So I joined right out of high school. Went through boot camp, and boot camp for me was, I don't know. I don't want to say it was like, I definitely didn't have it the hardest. Like, there were some people who I was like, why are you even here, dude? Like, what made you think you should join the Marine Corps?
But those are the people who stayed, right? At least with us, it was kind of, well, for me, it was like, there was the small weak ones were the ones that were like committed and made it through. We had like big guys who seemed strong and you would think that they would be able to make it through, but they were the ones that ended up quitting.
No, for the females, it was for the females, like right off the bat, you could tell who was gonna succeed and who was gonna be like at the top, and then you could tell immediately like who was the like there. I don't know how to explain it without being mean.
I'd like to go back though. Let's go back because I want to talk more about our going into the military and before even actually going to boot camp. So there was I forgot what the process like I forget the entire process, but I remember Marine Corps recruiter reached out to me in high school. I was still a senior in high school, and they reached out to me and were like, "Hey, what are your plans?" I think he even called me, and I was like, "All right, I guess I'll answer this guy." And he might have even messaged me on like Facebook or something. But did your recruiter do the same thing, or how did they get in contact with you? Or did you like pursue it? Did you go out and?
I pursued it. I had a boyfriend at the time who graduated high school before me. He joined the Marine Corps, and I was kind of thinking like, oh, that sounds really cool. Like I always wanted to join the military, but I never thought I could do it. I had plans to go to cosmetology school and become a hairstylist or an esthetician. And that was what my entire senior project was around, was going to cosmetology school. And then it was kind of like mid to late senior year. My boyfriend at the time was like, "Oh, I need someone to sign up so that I can get promoted to Lance Corporal." And I was like, "I'll do it."
Mm.
And he kind of was just like, "Okay." So he took me to his recruiter, signed me up, and I don't think that they thought I was serious about it, but I was like, "Okay, this is what I put like everything into it." Like that became like my obsession. It was like that's who I was at that point. Like I was known to everybody as the girl that's joining the military, like because my class was like 30 something people. And so that became my whole life. I went to PT twice a week. Every chance I got, I was at the recruiter's office practicing to hold a guide on, because I wanted to be a guide.
Which PT in the military means physical training, right? Is it? Mm-hmm. Not physical therapy, which is the other kind of PT. Okay, so the delayed entry program was basically you every week, at least for us, it was every week you would go and train with everyone else who was about to join. And then slowly people would get sent off. I was in delayed entry for probably 6 months. Had to go to the MEPS, which I'm not sure what that stands for. I'm not sure what it means, but basically you went and it was an entry like station, I guess. So
it was basically where they tested you for your ASVAB. They tested your ASVAB there, but they also like did medical testing on you and like physical, like they did a physical for you, and that's where you would meet your like military liaison and go through like more in-depth paperwork than what was just than what the recruiters did. And so you have to go through MEPS in order to be qualified to go. And that's where you like swear in, that's where you say the oath and everything like that.
Yeah, so I remember I went to MEPS, I think for the first time. I don't know if it was, I think it was the test and like the actual computer test or whatever, like written test, but it's on a computer. And it's just I think when people think of the ASVAB, they think it's like test your knowledge. But from what I understand, there was a lot of like, and what I've heard it described as is it tests your ability to learn or something like that. So I remember the reading portion was a lot of like, here's a word that you don't know, and here's it used in a sentence. Can you try to figure out what this word means? And then that tests your ability to reason, I think is kind of a good way of putting it. And then you get put in a percentile. I think I was 95th percentile. So I got a 95 on the ASVAB, and then it breaks it down in your different categories. But I had to go take that test, and then went to medical, and they check everything. They check from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head is everything.
Yeah. I had to get so I didn't actually take my ASVAB at MEPS. I forgot what it's called, but the recruiters can have you do a different. Yeah, I did the PICAT, and then I had to go and do like a shorter version of the ASVAB just to to prove basically that I didn't cheat.
That's what I did.
because I have test anxiety bad. I'm so bad under pressure with testing and everything. But I did not have that experience with the ASVAB, like, learn this word, tell me what this word. No, like, I remember, like, English was fine, science was fine. It was the math that did me, dude. First of all, I dropped out of high school my sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was doing 2 years at the same time. And as soon as I got the amount of credits that I needed for math, I was done with it. I didn't do the AP classes or calculus or trig or anything like that. Like, I did algebra 2, and then I was gone.
Yeah, I was up there in math, but I don't remember the math being that hard.
For me, it was because I never in school grasped how to do long division on paper or how to do percentages. And those were the only freaking questions that I got on the ASVAB. And I remember just being like, I'm just going to wing it. And I just picked one. I had absolutely no idea.
And it's multiple choice, so you can.
Yeah. So I just picked. And so I firmly believe that if I would have just like paid attention in math for percentages, I would have had a way higher ASVAB score.
What was your score?
I mean, I didn't have a bad score. I had a 79.
Yeah.
Which wasn't horrible. I met people that had like 45 or something.
I think there was like a certain, the lowest score you could get was like a 30 or something before you had to get a waiver and also the ASVAB score, why it's important is because it applies to
what kind of job you can get.
So there's certain jobs that require a certain number for an ASVAB. So you need to have at least a 70 or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So I never had an issue trying to select a job because I had a good ASVAB score. So I got to pick.
So this is what's funny about. So when I went and I like got into the delayed entry program, my recruiter was like, okay, what kind of job do you think you want? And immediately I was like, I want combat camera and nothing else. And he was like, oh, well, we don't have any spots open for comm cam. But like, if you want, you can wait for a spot. And I was like, I'm not doing anything but comm cam.
Yeah.
And I was firm with that. I was like, I'm not doing anything but comm cam. So he called up the Marine Corps liaison up at MEPS, and I still remember this guy, Gunny Ajama. Shout out to you, because he actually became my recruiter after.
Because he's listening to the podcast, so
he probably does. But anyway, he called him up and he found me a spot. And then I remember there was this, I was at MEPS going to sign for my job. That's the job I was going to get. And there was this other girl, and I was talking to her, and she was joining the Marine Corps, but we weren't at the same recruiting station. So we had just met, we were talking, and she was like, oh, what job are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm doing comm cam. There's only one spot left, and I'm so lucky that I get it. And she goes, oh, well, I'm here for comm cam too. And I was like, oh, well, like, they already promised me that it was my spot, like, that I'm getting this job. And she was like, well, we'll see, because I'm leaving for, she had already graduated high school. And she was like, well, I'm leaving really soon, so I guess I'm going to get it. And then it just became like this thing where we were kind of like bitter with each other.
That sounds pretty dramatic.
But I remember walking into that recruiting office, and I was like, this is my job.
Yeah.
I will not go if I do not get this job.
Do you know if she went into comm cam, or do you know if she got a different job?
She did go into comm cam.
Okay. So you both got it.
Yes, because that's when they, I guess, the recruiters had no idea that this was going on, but that's when comm cam was transitioning into Comstrat, and they needed more people. So that's why we had so many people cycling through all the time while we were in school, but it used to not be like that, I guess. And so she was like, I think, the first class that went through the Comstrat through MCF.
Right, because when we were going through that, we were I think I was class like 13
I
or
was
something.
9. I was class 9. I was the
Yeah.
ninth. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was brand new. I forgot about that.
And so she graduated right before I got there. She graduated from Dimphos right before I got there. And she went to boot camp. She graduated boot camp, I think, a month before I went to boot camp.
So let's talk about boot camp then. You went to boot camp in Parris Island.
Yeah.
Which is where? South
Carolina.
Parris Island, South Carolina, which I think they added female platoons to San Diego, right?
That was after I graduated boot camp.
Right.
That was a while after I graduated boot camp.
Right. But at the time, that was the only female that if you were a woman, you went to Parris Island.
Yes.
No matter where you were.
If you were a female, didn't matter what you identified as. If you were a female.
Well, you don't know about that now.
You went to, at the time, if you had a vagina, you went to Parris Island. They didn't care about all that at the time that I went.
Yeah.
So, and you were in 4th platoon.
Because there was also males at Parris Island. So the way that it works.
Or sorry, not 4th platoon, 4th battalion. You were in 4th battalion.
So there were males all over the United States. If you were a male, it depended. I think it was which side of the Mississippi.
It depended on which side of the Mississippi River you were on. So if you're on the east side, you went to the East Coast. You went to Parris Island. If you're on the west side, you went to San Diego. And I remember at the time, there were all these people, like all the guys were like, oh, like West Coast is so cool because we have to do the, what is it called?
Reaper.
Yeah, we have to do the Reaper. And you guys in Parris Island are just a bunch of wussies. And okay, let me tell you something. We didn't have a Reaper and we didn't have a bunch of hills that we had to hike, but we were constantly soaking wet. I remember the webbing of my feet was splitting and bleeding constantly because my feet were always wet because we were trudging through freaking, like it was, okay, first of all, it was always raining at the time that I went, but it was also hot at the same time. Felt like I was in a sauna. And the air, as soon as you walk out in the morning, even if it's not raining, it's hot. It was like 90 at 4 a.m. And just as soon as you go outside, like you feel the air is just wet. It's so disgusting. And the entire island smells like a freaking swamp. It just smells like you're constantly just walking through sewage.
Is the whole island dedicated to training, or was it like a functional base too?
It's a base. So yeah, it's like a training, like obviously the MCRD is on there, but there were also like there was housing for the people that worked on base, and they also had other operations other than just like boot camp.
It sounds a lot like San Diego though. Like it was mostly the majority of it, and what it was known for was that's the training ground, but then also there was some small stuff. It wasn't like a huge base or anything.
Didn't you guys also have to go to Pendleton for a lot of stuff though?
We had, yeah. So there was phase 3, I think it was called. So you had 4 phases in boot camp, and the first 2 phases were on. It was 13 weeks.
So
and
did you guys do the gas chamber on MCRD, or did you have to go to?
I think we did that on Pendleton.
Like all of the stuff, like the rappel tower and stuff, was that at MCRD or at Pendleton?
That was at San Diego.
Okay.
So
because yeah, the island, Parris Island, it was like we had to walk to different parts of the island every time we went to do something, and each like area of the island was dedicated to something different.
Yeah.
It was very weird.
That's how our base was. It was, you had like McMap, which was the martial arts that you had to do. There was an area for that. There was a track area. There was obstacle courses and stuff like that. There was a cafeteria, and then there was where you would, one thing I didn't expect was how much time we would be spending in the classroom learning about Marine Corps history or medical stuff or whatever it is. There was a lot of like, how much do you think? Probably at least a couple hours a day in a classroom.
The entire first phase, dude. The entire first phase was like pretty much just learning um
Customs and
courtesies and Marine Corps history, and then also you did a lot of drill.
yeah, there was a lot of drill.
Learning how to
Which that
drill,
honestly that was my favorite part.
learning ditties.
I loved drill.
I loved drill too.
Cuz I think what was cool about it was like you knew that there was a focus, and the focus was to try to get better at drill. The issue was like they would punish you a lot if you messed up or whatever.
Oh,
But
so much.
I think it depends on who your drill instructor was. But we did a lot of like running back and forth, and it was those games are kind of stupid. But I think once you change your mindset to like these games that we're playing it's all just a part of the bigger story, the bigger picture. And you can get out of the mindset of like, oh no, we messed up and we're getting punished. Like those are the people who their mentality wasn't strong enough to make it through. If you're if you're living in the like, oh, we messed up, like if that's your mindset the whole time, like you're going to be miserable. But if you're like, we're just running back and forth for now. But for me, I was like, in an hour, we won't be, or even in 10 minutes or whatever, like it'll be different.
Yeah. I never thought like that. But I also wasn't like, oh, poor me. Like I have to run. Like I just remember getting pissed off.
They said to go from meal to meal. Like that's how you should think of it. Is that how you?
Yeah. Well, that's what my recruiters had told me. But for me, it was like I enjoyed all of the different things that we had to do. The only thing I didn't enjoy was like IT in classes. I hated the classes. I remember I would always fall asleep.
IT is what they call it when you were getting punished.
Incentive training.
Yeah. So that's when you're it's usually some sort of workout that you have to do, whether it's running or push-ups or.
But with a drill instructor screaming in your face.
Yeah.
But I remember when we started the classes, like I would get so tired. Like you're so exhausted physically and mentally that when you have a chance to sit down, like your body automatically just like wants to sleep. So I would have such a hard time staying awake in these classes. I would take my little hand sanitizer and I would sniff it and it would help me stay awake.
That was an issue for a lot of people, staying awake. For me, I'm glad that I never struggled with that. Like I never struggled with sleeping in the middle of the day. Was really? Why do you think that is? Do you think that when you were home before, did you take naps during the day or something? Were you used to?
I didn't take naps and I didn't get a lot of sleep at night. I got like maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep at night during high school. But I think it was just that I was not used to that. You're moving and walking and lugging crap around all day long. You don't stop for anything except chow. And even that, it's 5 minutes. Chow is 5 minutes and then you're up and doing it again.
That was more than that.
And so.
Total from like waiting in line to moving 15. On to the next thing. Yeah, probably like 15 minutes.
But I think that's what it was, is I was just like so physically tired and mentally drained, like because you have to be focused and sharp all the time. You can't let your guard down. You can't let your mind wander off and think about other things, or else you're gonna mess up. And that was my thing, is I did not want to mess up. I would beat myself up so hard if I messed up anything, to the point where I got IT'd probably a total of 4 or 5 times the entire time I was in boot camp.
That's crazy.
Because I didn't mess up.
No, that's because.
And the only time that I got IT'd was, I remember one time, the only time that I got IT'd because of myself and not somebody else was once. And that was because my drill instructor, she hated me. Now, looking back, I think I was one of her favorites.
Yeah.
But maybe not. She treated me like crap, dude. She was so hard on me.
Yeah. That's cute. So you got IT'd.
Sergeant Linderos.
You got IT'd 4 to 5 times in boot camp. I got IT'd 4 to 5 times a day.
Okay, but listen. No. I didn't get IT'd a lot, but like mentally, it was really hard for me because my drill instructors had such high expectations of me, and they would constantly, like, they mentally effed me, dude. Like I didn't have the IT, but like mentally, like they would beat me up with their words all the time. And I had this drill instructor, she every single I swear, every day she would come up to me. And I was at the time, like I was someone who like didn't like you had to earn my respect. Like just because you were a drill instructor didn't mean I respected you. If that made sense. Like I
Mm-hmm.
didn't that's not how I operated. I was like, you have to earn my respect. I don't care who you are. If you're going to treat me like absolute trash, like I get the
Yeah.
drill instructor side of it, but when you personally attack me and you're trying to mentally beat me up, like F you. That was my thought
That's not,
process.
I wouldn't recommend that mentality going through boot camp,
No,
but
I don't recommend it because listen, this is where that got me. Every day she would walk up to me and literally try to like coerce me into fighting her, physically hitting her. She'd be like, come on, Hunt, I know you want to punch me. Just punch me. Just do it. Just do it. And she'd be in my face, this close to my face, spitting in my face.
Well, she knew that you needed to respect her despite how you felt about her.
Right.
And so she was like purposefully making it hard for you to respect her, which I think that there is.
But now she's the drill instructor that I respect more than anybody.
Yeah,
looking back.
It's interesting that the ones with the highest standards were the ones that at the end of it we were like,
and she was
really
the only
appreciated.
one. Her and my senior, they were the only ones that I cared about what they thought about me. Like I cared if they were proud of me or if they were disappointed in me.
Yeah.
So my mindset was that I have to be perfect, and so I pretty much was. Like there, of course, like I messed up sometimes, but like when it came to drill, like I would not let myself mess up. When it came to like Marine Corps knowledge, like I would not let myself mess up. I remember there was one time where I was walking to the senior drill instructor hut, and you know how you have to like stand outside the senior drill instructor hut, and then you have to say like, "Good morning, ma'am. This recruit uh, uh what is it?
Go
Request
ahead.
to speak with senior drill instructor Staff Sergeant Tan." And so I remember I was walking up there because I had something that I needed to ask her, and I in my head I was like, okay, you have to say senior drill instructor Staff Sergeant Tan. And I was kept saying that to myself, and of course, the freaking second I walk up there, I said, "Good morning, ma'am. This recruit requests to speak with senior drill instructor Sergeant San." She was a staff sergeant.
Yeah.
And immediately I was like, what the F did I just do? And she looked at me and she was like, "Sergeant, are you effing kidding me, Hunt?" And I was so disappointed in myself. I didn't even let her finish. I just walked away.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't even deserve to speak to you right now. And I beat myself up so hard for that.
I remember I think I was really concerned going in about the physical aspect of everything. I was concerned about the running and the martial arts and the pull-ups and the push-ups and all of that stuff. But yeah, I didn't give enough credit to the mental side of things, like how hard it would be mentally. Because I mean, when you talk about it, when we talk about it now, it's like, okay, they were yelling at me, you know. But in the moment, it's like, I think there was an aspect of, I really want, these people are pushing me hard, and I really want them to see that I'm working hard, and I want them to be proud of me. I think is kind of,
Yeah.
for some reason, there's this like feeling of, I want you to be proud of me. And then when they would say, you suck, it was like, dang, I'm doing all this hard work. And for you to tell me that I suck is, like, that's what hurt, which was that mental side of things, like just the constant being told you're not, what you're doing is not enough. And for you to be working so hard and then being told that that's still not enough. One thing that I remember, one of our sergeant that, we hated at the beginning, like cause he was just so hard on us. At the end, we learned that he really wanted to push us and for us to be the best Marines that were ever created. It's like, that was his mentality. And he told us that, and I've said this before, but he's told us, the reason that I push you so hard is, and the reason that I test you and I break you is so that no one else can, which I thought was just the coolest thing for him to say. Like, he's like, when you get out there into the world and someone else tries to test you, they're not going to be able to because I broke you. He's like, I've pushed you harder than anyone else can. Yeah. And so, like, you're not going to have a problem out there, which that is really just I think the whole experience of boot camp is being pushed so hard that I think, some people say, yeah, it's the baseline, but I think the other side of it is it's also just being pushed and broken so hard that once you're out, you're like, okay, I've gone through worse. And so you can, obviously there's some people who go through worse when they're actually in the fleet, right? They're out in combat zones and stuff like that. And I would say that might be worse, but at the same time, they're like, I played these mental games in my basic training that they have a standard and they've been pushed mentally to where they have more resistance to that kind of a thing. Versus think about what they're doing to the military now. They're trying to accommodate so many people and try to be so inclusive and things like that. And it's like, that's not how it works. It's meant to push you so hard that when you go out and you're in war, you're not going to be like, oh no, my feelings hurt. Someone talk to me about my feelings. Yeah. Like what are they doing there?
No, when you're out there, no one's going to care about what you identify as.
Yeah.
No one's going to care. And that you shouldn't care either.
Like they said they were going to stop, and I don't know if they've implemented this, but they said they were going to stop recruits having to call their drill instructors sir and ma'am or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it's just, yes, drill instructor, or whatever it is, whatever they say.
And they shut down 4th Battalion, which is so sad.
What does that mean?
4th Battalion was the female battalion.
Right, but what is that? What is the implications of that?
They deactivated.
So there's no more women in the Marine Corps?
No, there's no more 4th Battalion. Now the women are integrated with the men.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is that?
So they have separate sleeping quarters still, but they train together. Both on Parris Island and San Diego.
What do you know about that?
Now for females, it's what side of the Mississippi River you're on. Depends where you go.
And what do you know about the way that affects the training and stuff like that?
I don't necessarily think that it affects the training because we get the same training. What I think it does affect is the females' bodies. Because I remember without training literally alongside the males, like the females already had it hard on their bodies because all of the Marine Corps equipment is made for men. And so like the packs hurt our hips constantly. A lot of people had hip injuries.
A lot of women.
A lot of women had hip injuries.
None of the guys had hip problems, which is interesting. There's just something biomechanically.
Well, our bodies are different, and right. I think that it's stupid of somebody to say that they're not.
Yeah.
And I think that it's stupid to say that females can do everything that males can do. I think that's not true, and I think that if that's what your idea of feminism is, then it's wrong.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to acknowledge that men and women are different, and women I think it's very important that they get the right equipment so that they're not putting their bodies at risk. I was not even in the Marine Corps for very long, and I have to this day problems with my back and my neck and my hips. And I'm 23 years old.
Yeah.
It should not be that way.
Well, I think the problem with trying to more closely integrate women into the military, and I don't have an issue with it because I think there's plenty of things that women can do. I think there's a lot of, I hate to say like admin or, but there are jobs that women are capable of that they don't need to have. I don't think they need to have the same standards of physical fitness as some of the men. Like you're not going to be a Navy SEAL if you're working in an office.
Well, that's where I disagree. I think that I like the idea of, or I like the fact that women, no matter what your job is, you have to meet the same physical standards.
They're not the same standards.
Well, between male and female, like.
Well, because guys had to do.
Well, just okay. So saying that just because you're admin, you can just get fat and you shouldn't have to work out.
No, I don't think that you should
I don't think that.
Yeah.
No, you have to be ready to deploy at any time.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about the Marine Corps compared to the other branches is like you're always ready. Readiness, like that's so important. But I think it's also important to realize, like, to acknowledge that women are different and women are not going to be as physically fit as men. Sure, some women are, and shout out to them. I couldn't do it.
Right. That's why I'm saying, like, I think that if the standards were the same across the board, and if there are women who can meet those standards, great, like let them in. But my issue is like when you try to combine females and men in the same platoon, and there's going to be some level of decreasing the expectations from the males, or because I don't think that they're going to say no to women. Like they're going to try to get as many people in as they can. Right.
Well, what I think is going to happen and what's probably happening now is there's going to be less women graduating from boot camp because they're injured.
Probably, yeah.
There's probably so many females stuck in boot camp right now waiting to heal so that they can graduate.
Yeah.
I remember we had like 4 or 5 drops that dropped into our platoon, and a lot of them had been there for 6+ months just waiting to heal so that they could graduate boot camp. Because you can't just get injured and say, "Oh, I'm done." No, you made a commitment. Like if it's bad and they don't see you healing, you're going to get out. They're not going to give you a choice. But for the majority,
well, I think some people do have. There was one guy who had some sort of cancer and was he was in boot camp, I think technically for like 3 years, and eventually graduated, which I think is kind of crazy. So I think you do have some say in, like, because there were some people who were just like, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. And so you can quit.
You can, but it's not that simple. You can't just say, I want to quit. You have to say, I'm going to kill myself if you don't get me out.
A lot of people said that they were going to kill themselves, but then I don't think that was worth it. I wonder if having females in the male platoons now gives the men more of a pressure to succeed. Because when you're not around just other men, or it's like a bunch of guys, and then if one of you quits, it's like, all right, you couldn't handle the heat, so you got out. But if it's like men and women, and then you have all these girls around you, I feel like, at least for me, I feel like I would have more pressure to make it. For me, that was never an issue. I never thought I'm going to quit. I remember
I had a pressure to be better.
Yeah.
Whenever we trained with the males.
Yeah. And I think that you probably push each other. I think that's true with any person though. I think if you were to go to boot camp by yourself, then you would probably quit. But if because you're in a platoon and because you have people around you who are going through the same thing, that's what got me through, at least, is all the relationships and looking at the other guys and being like, wow, guys, this sucks, huh? And then we make it through together.
I did not. I had a lot of enemies in my platoon. I did. A lot of people did not like me because even when I wasn't in a leadership position, when I wasn't a squad leader, I was hard on the people around me. I was hard on myself, but I was probably harder on them because if they messed up, I was punished for it, and I hated that. I hated being punished, like, because I tried so hard to be perfect, like I said. And so when I did something perfectly and I was still punished for it because some idiot couldn't do it, like that's how I thought, is like, this idiot can't do it. Mm-hmm. I don't like them because they're not as good as I am. You shouldn't go in with that mindset, but that's the mindset that I had. So I was hard on them. I was screaming at people all the time. I was like, get your together. And like, just, I
It's
should
funny how
have.
much you're censoring yourself. But I think that that's what that's how you get everyone else to hate you. As soon as you turn into like a mini DI.
That's literally, that is what I became. And I wish that I didn't do that, because I think to this day there's a lot of people that I went to boot camp with who don't like me, but they never really got to see who I was. They just saw who I was in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, you're just constantly in stress, and so there wasn't a lot of time to be like, hey, I'm going to sit with you and we're going to talk. Unless I guess kind of at church, which I think is cool that they on Sundays it's like they had a bunch of different services that you could go to, and that was definitely a time to like decompress. And
Really?
that's what got me through. That's when I would pull out my book, my little notebook I would have in my one of my pockets that I was allowed to carry. But you were allowed to carry stuff in your cargo pockets if it didn't make them bulge. So I think I had my notebook in there. And when I was at church, that's when I would draw this calendar and I would start crossing off days. And that was like, I would just look at that calendar and watch those X's just slowly build up until the last
They
week.
wouldn't let us, when we went to church, they wouldn't let us write letters. They wouldn't let us talk to each other. Like when you were at church, you had to sit there and be quiet and listen to what the pastor was saying. Then when the only time that we were able to do anything is when they were doing worship. But the only time that I had any time to talk to anybody was after lights out. And there were only a handful of people who approached me or would actually try to have a conversation with me and get to know me. The majority of my platoon did not. They didn't want anything to do with me.
Yeah. I see why. if you were yelling at them just as much as the drill instructors, then like I think that's the difference in management and leadership. Is a leader makes you want to do something. A manager tells you what to do, and a leader makes you want to do it.
Yeah, and I wish that I had, before I went to boot camp, I knew that I wanted to be in a leadership role. I wish that I would have asked more questions about how to do that successfully, because I watched what the drill instructors were doing and I just imitated it.
Yeah.
But it's like among your peers, like they don't want that from you.
Yeah. Your drill instructors are your managers. They make sure that you eat on time, that you are at PT on time, that you go to your class on time. They're not leaders. They're not there to inspire you to. I mean, sometimes they would take off their duty belt and cover and be like, I'm going to sit with you and talk with you. But that rarely happened.
Yeah. And I kind of like when we went into MCT, and we can talk about that whole situation in another podcast, but I took that leadership mentality that I had from boot camp into MCT, and that just created problems for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized that I wasn't doing it right, because I guess I didn't want to be in any leadership position when I went to MCT. I wanted to lay low and just get through it. But I was in a platoon with men, and a lot of them, so I knew some people from the delayed entry program. I got to go to MCT with them, and one of them was my best friend. He was my best friend. We're not friends anymore, and it makes me really sad. But we got to be in the same platoon together, and so a lot of the guys, I was friends with them, and they kind of went on my behalf. I didn't know this, to the what were they called? The
combat instructor.
The combat instructor. And they were like, "Hey, you should make Hunt the female squad leader." And so that's what they did. They called me into the office and they were like, "Hunt, you're squad leader." And I was like, "Okay." And I guess there was this other girl who really wanted to be squad leader. I didn't want to be squad leader, but I took the role. And then I took in that leadership mentality where I was yelling at them and everything, and like telling them to get their crap together. And this girl who wanted to be squad leader, she like looked at me and she was like, "No one respects you because you yell at us. You shouldn't be yelling at us. You're supposed to be our friend, and that's not the way to get anybody to do anything. Nobody likes you. And that's when I was kind of like in the moment, I was like, I don't give a if you like me. Yeah, I'm censoring myself, okay? In the moment, I looked at her and I was like,
I just think it's funny, like, why censor yourself at all if we know what you're gonna say?
Well,
I don't care if you like me, you can say that.
I don't want to cuss, but I'm telling you exactly what I said. Like that's it. Like back then, like F this, F that. Like that was how I talked.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I was like, I don't care if you like me, and I kind of like I didn't take it for what it was. But I remember later that night, I kept thinking about it, and I was like, wow, really? Like nobody likes me? Is that really how it is? Like, and then I realized like I only had one female friend. And even then, like she talked to me like hardly ever. I had one female friend in my platoon. All of my other friends were the guys.
Mm-hmm.
They were who I hung out with. They were who I talked to. Females wanted nothing to do with me. And I wish I was different. Like looking back, like everybody that you know in the Marine Corps, they're all tight. They all talk to each other still. They all have these memories. I don't have that with anybody. A handful of people. And then I remember like on Facebook someone like tagged some people from our boot camp on this like Marine Corps post, like tell your funny boot camp stories. And I saw it and I was looking at the comments and a lot of them were people like talking crap about me.
What were they saying?
There was this one that I remember most clearly was this girl was saying, and I don't even remember this in boot camp. I don't remember this happening. But she said this other girl was yelling from across like something happened. I yelled something at them for them to do something because they weren't doing it right. And then the other girl was like, shut up, Hunt. Nobody cares or something like that. And I guess everybody thought that was so funny. Everyone thought that was so funny that she told me to shut up. And like that's been like an inside joke, I guess. And that hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I thought that I was I thought I was doing it right.
Because you were doing what the drill instructors were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I had a similar kind of experience in combat training after boot camp, and where I was made guide for not even a week, I don't think, but yeah, I was made guide, and I kind of took on this idea of like, all right, I'm the manager now. I have to yell at people and make sure things are in order. And I think part of that pressure is the combat instructors or the drill instructors in boot camp. They have that expectation from you to have things in order, and you only know their example. And yeah, it was the same thing where it's like, no one liked me. I think people liked me better as one of them. When I wasn't a manager, when I didn't have any sort of role, I was a leader, and I was like talking to people, hanging out with people, and like I cared about them. But then when they made me guide, it's like all of a sudden I had this power, the hunger for power to yell at people and make sure that they weren't vaping and stuff like that, and which is a whole nother thing. But that's crazy. I didn't know that you were such a B word in boot camp.
I was.
It makes sense though.
And that was also before I had any sort of relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
That was before I knew like how I should be acting, and yeah. Wish it was different, but
for the record, I don't think that you are a B word.
I know.
That was a joke.
Then.
That was a joke. I
won't deny
everybody.
it. I was.
No, I think I'm glad that you are who you are now, and I appreciate you. And I think you've grown, and it's cool to see a little bit of who you were in the military, and then where you are now with 2 kids and taking care of them and me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty awesome. Grown a lot in the past few years.
Yeah, I'm a lot different than I used to be.
I I was a Christian in boot camp, but I don't think I was a real Christian. I think it wasn't
Yeah.
until we had kids that it was like, we need God. We need him in our lives. We need him to
Yeah.
take the pressure off of parenting and marriage, because there's people put so much pressure on themselves now to make things succeed. And I remember my this is actually fast forward after boot camp and combat training in the fleet. My captain at the time, I think he was a captain, he found out that I was getting married, and that because you were pregnant and then we got married, which, yeah, whole nother story. But we got married. How fast did we get married after finding out you were pregnant? Like a month after? It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
quick. But yeah, so my captain was like, you know what? Every person that I've known that has been married in the military, their marriage does not last. He's like, I don't think you guys are going to make it.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if he was saying that to inspire me. It didn't seem that way. It seemed like he was bitter. I think he'd also just gotten out of a divorce or
Yeah.
whatever he was going through. And so I think there might have been a little bitterness in that.
Yeah.
And yeah, for him to be like, you guys aren't going to make it. I was like, yeah, that's probably true if we didn't if we didn't have God in our marriage, you know. I think if God wasn't a part of our marriage, we'd probably already be separated by now.
Yeah.
Just
Probably.
because it's so hard being married. It's so hard to it's so hard to make peace with an entirely different human being when you're around each other so much, you know?
Mm.
I mean, you do know
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you have the
That can be a
benefit.
whole other story. It's like our time. We can do another one on our time in the MCT, but then also like our testimonies and how we actually came to, because I was in the same boat. I told people I was Christian, but really in boot camp, I went to church for the music. That was the only reason I went.
Hmm. Right? Because there was no listening to music. That wasn't
Yeah.
a thing. And so, yeah, you went Sunday and that was your little dose of getting to sing and
Yeah.
just listen. Yeah. Good old days, huh?
I remember my senior, she sat us down. She, our drill instructor would sit us down a lot and like have female talks with us about like how, um, like not to be barracks bunnies and like don't be that female that sleeps around, and like they gave us those talks all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But then she also sat us down and she was like, I know you hate this right now, but one day you're going to say that you miss it. And I feel that all the time. I miss it all the time. I do miss boot camp. Like looking back, like I wish I had that structure.
Yeah, it was kind of simple.
Yeah.
Like you wake up, work out, eat, work out some more,
Yeah.
learn, eat, like that.
Like I miss boot camp, but I also miss the Marine Corps. Even all the parts that I complained about the entire time I was in. And I wish that it didn't have to turn out the way that it did. But we
Yeah,
can get
it was
into that
it was
later.
the unity between everyone around you. Like you didn't have time to worry about, hey, what are your political views or whatever? What do you believe about this? What's your skin color? Like, where are you from?
Yeah.
Like, you don't really have time to think about that. It's like you and me have a mission or whatever it is. We're gonna
Or
do this together.
and we have this bond. Like we have to like each other. We have to be friends.
You have to cooperate. You have to work together.
There's no room for pettiness.
I'm not going to work with you because I don't like your skin color or I don't
Yeah.
like what you believe about X, Y, or Z. It's like there's no time to think about that. It's just you and me. We're getting through this, and like I think that was so cool that I can't look back in boot camp and be like, oh, this is this guy. He had this belief, and he was black, and I didn't like him for that. Or it's like you were all one. You were all just a unit.
Well, there's that saying that you all bleed green. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what color you are, you all bleed green.
And I think that's what's so beautiful about the military is that when you have that common, you're wearing the same uniform and you all earned it. Like that was so beautiful about
Yeah.
that. And
I
now you
do.
don't really have that.
Yeah. I do. Like, I didn't have a lot of people that I was super close to, but I do miss just having all those people around.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if they didn't like me, like, I knew that if the time came, like, they'd have my back, you know? But anyway, we should stop it here, and we can, if you guys like this episode, if you want to hear anything else about our time in the military,
We could do a part 2.
I can do an entire episode where I talk about like what it was like for females specifically, or like how to prepare for boot camp if you're thinking about it. I could probably not even do a podcast episode, but I could probably do just like a YouTube video explaining that. But
if you are interested in a part 2 or making this a series where we talk about, I mean, we weren't in for very long, but if you are interested in hearing more, follow and subscribe and comment and let us know that that's what you're interested in hearing, because engagement is what lets us know what kind of content to produce. So yeah, if you want to hear more about this stuff, let us know, and we can do a part 2 maybe in a little bit. But yeah, if you enjoy like a parenting type stuff, we talk about birth a lot and babies and all of that kind of stuff, marriage. If you are interested in hearing more about that stuff, we have big plans for talking more about that and inviting more guests to speak on those kinds of things. So please follow our social media wherever it goes, podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And that's how we'll know that you guys are interested in that kind of a thing. So, yeah, we love you guys. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.